Most people who watch Berserk focus on the wrong thing. They focus on the violence, the demons, the scale of what Guts survives physically. And they walk away thinking the point is that he's built differently. Stronger. Harder. Some kind of exceptional case that the rest of us can admire but not apply to our own lives. That reading completely misses what Berserk is actually about. Guts is not exceptional because of what he can endure physically. He is exceptional because of a single psychological mechanism that almost no one around him possesses. And that mechanism is not strength. It is not willpower in the way motivational content describes it. It is a specific, identifiable response to loss that psychology has a name for, and once you understand it, you will see it operating everywhere. In people who survive things they shouldn't, in people who build things against every reasonable expectation, and in your own life at the moments when you did not stop even though stopping seemed like the only rational option. Let's go back to the beginning. Before the eclipse. Before Griffith. Before any of the events that most people point to when they talk about what made Guts who he is. Guts was sold as an infant. He was raised in a mercenary band and put into combat before he was old enough to understand what combat was. He survived things in his childhood that would produce, in clinical terms, complex post-traumatic stress disorder with dissociative features. This is not background detail. This is load-bearing information about who Guts is. By the time he is a teenager, Guts has already developed the core psychological adaptation that will define him for the rest of his life. He has learned to stay functional under conditions that shut other people down. Not because the conditions don't affect him, they do, deeply, but because his nervous system has been conditioned, through years of having no alternative, to keep producing output regardless of internal state. This is not a superpower. It is a trauma response. And like all trauma responses, it costs him something. What it costs him is the ability to receive care without suspicion, connection without bracing for loss, peace without treating it as a threat. When he joins the band of the Hawk, something changes for the first time. He encounters Griffith. And for reasons that even Guts himself cannot fully articulate, he chooses to stay. Not because he is ordered to. Not because he has nowhere else to go. He makes an active choice to belong to something. This is the psychological turning point that almost no analysis of Berserk spends enough time on. The research on human resilience consistently finds one factor that separates people who recover from catastrophic loss from people who don't. It is not strength. It is not intelligence. It is not optimism. It is the prior experience of having chosen something and had that choice matter. People who have never experienced meaningful agency, whose lives have been entirely subject to forces outside their control, tend to collapse when catastrophe hits because they have no psychological model for their choices producing real outcomes. Why choose anything when choice has never changed anything? Guts, by choosing to stay with the Hawks and having that choice produce real belonging, real connection, real purpose for the first time, builds something he has never had before. A stake in the outcome. And then the eclipse takes it all away. What happens to Guts after the eclipse is one of the most accurate portrayals of acute traumatic grief ever committed to any medium. He does not become motivated by hope. He does not find a new reason to live in any conventional sense. He does not heal. He rages. He moves because stopping would mean the eclipse was the end of his story. And something in him, some part that survived everything before Griffith and will survive everything after, refuses to let someone else write the ending. Psychologists call the process he undergoes post-traumatic growth. The name sounds clinical and almost optimistic, which is deeply misleading. Post-traumatic growth is not healing. It is not the pain going away or the loss becoming acceptable. It is the process of being completely destroyed and then, in the wreckage, finding that you are still capable of motion. Not comfortable motion. Not inspired motion. Just motion. And motion, sustained long enough, rebuilds the capacity for more motion. This is why Guts resonates with people who have been through real loss. not because they romanticize what he experiences, but because they recognize the mechanism. The way you get out of bed not because you feel strong but because you are not willing to stay down. The way you keep moving through something not because you can see the end of it but because stopping feels like a worse outcome than continuing. Now here is the part that most character analyses skip because it makes people uncomfortable. Guts is not a model to imitate wholesale. His psychological adaptations keep him alive and functional, but they also isolate him, damage his relationships, and prevent him for large stretches of the story from receiving the support that would actually help him. His refusal to stop is also a refusal to rest. His inability to be broken is also an inability, for a long time, to be fully known. The lesson is not, be like Guts. The lesson is more specific than that. There is a concept in behavioral psychology called behavioral activation. The core idea is that action precedes motivation, not the other way around. Most people operate on the assumption that you need to feel ready before you act. You need to feel motivated, or confident, or clear on the outcome, or at least not actively opposed to what you're about to do. And so when those feelings are absent, when you are grieving, or scared, or exhausted, or simply do not believe that what you do will matter, you wait for them to arrive. They don't arrive. They follow action. They are produced by action. Guts does not wait to feel ready. He does not wait to feel strong. He does not wait for the wound to close or the grief to become manageable, or the odds to shift in his favor. He takes the next step because the alternative is to stop, and stopping has a cost that he is not willing to pay. This sounds simple. It is not. Because the question that always follows is, act toward what? Move in which direction? And if you don't know the destination, what exactly are you doing? And here is where Berserk gives you the most honest answer available. You don't always get to know the destination. Guts spends enormous stretches of his arc without a clear goal beyond survival and the faint, often flickering intention to reach Griffith. He does not have a plan. He has a direction. Sometimes the direction is just away from where he was. Sometimes it is towards something or someone he is not certain he can reach. What he does not do is nothing. And that distinction, between doing nothing and doing something without certainty of outcome, is the entire space in which every life that recovers from catastrophe is lived. If you are watching Berserk right now, and something in it is landing differently than you expected, it is probably because you recognize that space. The gap between where you are and where you are supposed to be. The sense that something has been taken, or failed, or ended before it should have. The absence of a clear path forward and the presence of a decision about whether to keep moving anyway. The manga does not promise you that the path forward exists. It does not promise that the effort will be proportionate to the outcome. It does not promise that you will arrive somewhere that justifies what it costs you to get there. It only shows you one thing, again and again, across thousands of pages. Someone who did not stop. Not because the stopping wouldn't have been understandable. Not because the reasons to stop weren't real or weren't legitimate or weren't, in some objective sense, overwhelming. But because he made a decision, at some point so early in his life that he may not even remember making it, that his story was not going to end at the point where someone else decided it should. That decision is available to you right now. Not the strength. Not the certainty. Not the absence of fear or pain or reasonable doubt. Just the decision. Don't stop.